Good morning everyone, my name is Michelle. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It is Wednesday morning the 25th of September. I want to talk about the monster that is Stephan Sterns in this video. So Stephan Sterns was arrested in February after his 13-year-old quote-unquote stepdaughter was reported missing when her mother, Jen Soto, went to school to pick her up and she wasn't there. Stephan was the one to drop Madeline off in the morning, but cops quickly found out that he didn't drop her off at school at all. She was already dead when she was in the car. He went towards the school, he went around the area. She was dead in the car. He was caught on camera putting her book bag and her school-issued laptop into a dumpster at the apartment complex where Jen and Madeline lived and where Stephan sometimes resided. We know all this if we've been following the case. He was arrested because of the essay that he documented from 2019, the first recorded assault, documented on his phone. 61 counts of essay. Madeline was 13 when she died. She was 8 when that abuse started. That's what he was arrested for. And then in April, they came back and they arrested him for first-degree murder because 4 days after Madeline was reported missing, her body was found in the town of St. Cloud in a rural area about 20 miles away from their apartment complex in Kissimmee, Florida. All right, so that's the background. What are we going to talk about in this video? Well, Stephan Sterns' parents, Chris and Debbie, did an interview with the Hidden True Crime podcast, and that was aired a few days ago. And yesterday, Court TV did a segment as part of their Vinnie Politan Investigates series about Stephan Sterns' interview with Hidden True Crime. And there's one specific point that I want to pick up on here because I find it interesting, but I have questions. As a psychologist, I worked as a psychologist for over 20 years. Don't work as a psychologist anymore. I quit that job in 2021. But I retain all the knowledge, don't I? And I want to talk about Stephan Sterns' accident and how that contributed to his life as an adult. Let's go. So everything I'm going to talk about in this video does not excuse what Stephan Sterns did at all. 100%. I want to put that on the table straight away. Right? Can't start claiming this is a defence. This is no defence. Right? If you want to claim something like insanity, then you would literally have to not know right from wrong. That's not Stephan Sterns. Stephan Sterns knows absolutely that this was wrong. Why would he try to hide everything he did in a very manipulative and clever in some ways way? He thought he'd outsmarted the cops, and he's on camera everywhere. He thought, oh well, if I reset my phone and I leave my phone at home, they'll never know what happened. Well, okay, Stephan, don't back your stuff up to Google Cloud. Anyhow, his parents interviewed by Hidden True Crime. Now, I've heard this little snippet before. I've heard it before. Maybe I've read it in a police report, but it's about an accident when Stephan was just a little boy. And this accident, being run over by a pickup truck, his parents claim changed him forever. Let's listen to what they said on Hidden True Crime.
Stephan was literally run over by a pickup truck twice. He and a friend were playing in a parking area when he was 7 or 8 years old. The guy came out to his truck, a small Toyota pickup truck. Hey guys, how you doing? Gets in the truck and immediately backs over them. Pushes Stephan down into a bit of a hole in the parking lot. Drove right over him and hit him in the head with the bumper as he backed up the first time, and then. If that was enough, he pulled forward and ran over him again. The fact that Stephan isn't...
They hit him in the back of the head first, and then when Stephan raised up to look, he heard the kid screaming. quickly put it in gear and drove forward and hit him in the front, and then came up over his body, up over his pelvis area.
The fact that he wasn't permanently disabled and wheelchair bound is a miracle.
So the guy in the pickup truck didn't mean to run Stephan over. I'm guessing that Stephan was playing, 7-8-year-old little boy, and this guy gets into his truck, backs up to leave, and runs Stephan over, so hits him in the back of the head. Then rolls right over him, so assuming that Stephan is in the hole, so he's protected from, just getting squashed, but he'd already been hit by the bumper. So the pickup truck backs up. Hears the kid screaming, like his friend presumably, hears the kid screaming and panics, maybe, thinking, oh my word, my truck is on a kid, pulls forward, Stephan's in this hole, doesn't see him, and then Stephan pops his head up and gets hit in the front of the head. All right, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Chris and Debbie go on to say that Stephan was forever changed. He changed from an energetic, excitable little boy to what we see today. Like, somewhat lifeless, unable to keep a job. A man-child. A man-child. Let's listen to a little bit more.
When he was released from the hospital, the doctor said, "Hey, be cognizant of any difference in his attitude and his demeanor and such." And we pressed for more information, and we just told that he could have some headaches, dizziness, nausea, insensitivity to light and stuff. May not be able to wake up or go to sleep. And there could be some other physical traits. He developed a tic for a while, and he outgrew that. He did suffer
PTSD.
from PTSD and also separation anxiety.
Headaches, nausea, inability to sleep, all of that stuff could be concussion. Like, look out for concussion. This kid's been hit in the head. That's concussion, and that can go on for several weeks. So Stephan did recover, right? Some would say it was a bit of a shame that the pickup truck maybe didn't hit him at a higher speed, or maybe that hole wasn't there and it truly squashed him. You could argue that, but, it is what it is. We're here discussing this right now, not the what ifs and maybes. So Stephan grew into a listless, feckless young man. And his parents are seeking answers. His parents can't understand why on earth he would go on and become a pedo, have thousands of images of child pee, be possibly selling images. Don't know whether he was selling Madeline's, don't even know whether he was selling at all, but he didn't have a job, but he did have money. Now, he was stealing stuff off his dad, but all that said, his parents now believe that he did this on his own. In earlier interviews, they thought that Jen was just as blameworthy. They believe he was the sole perp now, based on the evidence that they've seen. They haven't seen any more than we have. But, yeah, as parents, they must be very, very, very distressed, disappointed, and just they love Madeline. They knew that the sleeping in bed with Stephan was wrong. They told him such, but he was just like a man-child, and he seemingly never recovered.
They had a lot of concerns with, I would say, arrested development, and that's my term, not theirs, but that's what they were getting at. They said that he didn't have a job, he would never take responsibility. They said that they would encourage him in different paths. So when they thought he was really interested in something, they would encourage a career path with him. They tried to help him multiple times get that job, get that interest, and that's what they said. Nothing clicked. He never really worked. He got a job at Disney, of all places, and that he did like these toys. Pokemon was another one, and that he would collect these toys, and that was an interest that continued on as a child and into adulthood. So those are some of the things that they explained about him that also concerned him. They said it was like he just went from like 29, or he went from 19 to 29 to 39, and like nothing ever stuck. He never became that responsible adult that they hoped he would become.
So how can we untangle the psychological effects of an accident? He did have some psychological effects, PTSD, anxiety. What I think his parents are really getting at is the personality change was permanent because it gave him a traumatic brain injury.
Dr. Gail Saltz, we only have about 20 seconds left here. What are your thoughts there about this concept, as Lauren points out, arrested development?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we see this, right? Young men and women, for that matter, who don't have ambition, which is something, again, traumatic brain injury, you would think about that, just can't sort of organize themselves, don't have a good moral compass. We don't know about other traumas that may have occurred to him when he was a younger person. Certainly, if you have an urge to be sexually with children, that is socially unacceptable, it's illegal, and it would make it difficult to function and motivate yourself to move forward in life.
All right, well, let's go Psych 101 here. Let's talk about the bizarre case of Mr. Phineas Gage. Who was he? Well, when he was 23 years old, a young man, he was working as a railroad foreman, and he survived a traumatic brain injury when an iron rod shot through his skull. A horrible, horrible accident while he was working. So, what happened here? He was working for the Rutland and Burlington Railroad Company. Amongst his duties, one of them was to clear rocks, to level the ground so that they could lay tracks. The task involved placing an explosive charge deep into the rock by drilling a hole. The hole was then filled with gunpowder. The fuse was set, and then it blew the rocks up. So on the afternoon of September 13th, near Cavendish, Vermont, he tamped down the gunpowder without the addition of sand, which he needed. His rod, which measured about 1 metre in length, about 3.5 feet, and it was about 1.25 inches in diameter, it shot up. Right, as the gunpowder ignited, this rod shot up and went completely through his head and landed about 80 feet behind him. But he survived. He survived. And immediately after the accident, he was conscious and able to speak. He did kind of lapse into some kind of semi-comatose state, and everybody was worried that he wouldn't pull through. But less than a month, actually only like 2 weeks after the accident, he got up out of bed and was walking. Throughout October, he continued to improve. Physically, he was fine. So he went to live with his parents in New Hampshire to recuperate. The doctor, Dr. Harlow, kept in touch with Phineas Gage for a lengthy period of time. So what we know about Phineas Gage's life after this is from Harlow's reports. He did lose sight in an eye, but physically he was in good health. Yet this rod went straight through his brain, but it did affect him mentally. Reports of Gage's life, it was that he went from a hard-working young man, like very pleasant, very friendly, to being surly, aggressive, a heavy drinker, unable to hold down a job, very impulsive. And was that a result of post-traumatic stress, like the psychological aspects, or was it a result of the injury itself? Well, now we have, modern techniques. What scientists have done is reconstructed Phineas Gage's accident. And in 1994, researchers used neuroimaging techniques to reconstruct Phineas Gage's skull and determine the exact placement of the injury. Their findings showed he suffered injuries to both the left and right prefrontal cortices, the frontal cortex, is responsible for executive function is about the higher order things that make us human, that give us inhibitions, that allow us to engage in a civilized manner. Phineas Gage had that part of his brain injured. A more recent study in 2004 used three-dimensional computer reconstruction analysis and found that the effects were limited to the left frontal lobe, which is responsible for things like emotion. So executive function, but from an emotional standpoint. In 2012, new research estimated that the iron rod destroyed approximately 11% of the white matter in Phineas Gage's frontal lobe. Now, there have been other cases similar to this. In 2022, a study of another individual who'd also had an iron rod go through his skull. It was found that the brain is able to selectively recruit non-injured areas to help perform functions previously assigned to the injured portion. Brain plasticity and the ability of the brain to rewire itself, even in an adult, was something that was thought impossible. Well, only a few years ago was thought impossible, but we know absolutely that the brain can do amazing things. Phineas Gage was unable to continue his previous job, and he just spent his life feckless, worked in some jobs, but just couldn't settle. Ended up going to the South American country of Chile, trying to work down there. Eventually, he moved to San Francisco, where his health deteriorated, started having seizures, and he actually died in 1860. Whether that was a result of his accident, probably was. Anyhow, how does all this relate to Stephan Sterns? Well, if Stephan Sterns was hit in the front of the head, and it did injure his brain, it could result in him becoming the feckless layabout, unable to grow up, arrested development, maybe in some ways never matured beyond the age of when he had the accident. Possibly. Doesn't excuse him in any way, by the way, I'll say that again, and it wouldn't make him a pedo. But I have questions about this. Presumably, there was medical reports, he had to go to the hospital. I'd like to see exactly where he was injured. You know, I don't think his parents are lying, but I'd like to see a medical report. I'd like to see exactly what doctors thought of the injury at the time. There's a police report. I mean, yes, this was an accident, but I'd like to know more about the accident, because we don't actually know, you know, I don't think the parents were there, and we don't actually know what part of his brain was injured. This guy was just setting off, he probably wasn't going high speed, but being hit in the back of the head with a bumper, and then in the front of the head with a bumper, maybe he does have a traumatic brain injury, but I would like to see that medical report to verify what actually happened to Stephan Sterns. Now, this was 30 years ago. They didn't have the brain imaging techniques that we have today. I mean, they did have brain imaging. Was he given something like an MRI? I'd like to know what the injury actually was. It makes sense, but then again, it could be a complete coincidence. Stephan Sterns may well have grown up into the feckless man-child that he is today. But it's interesting. I thought it would be an interesting perspective to share with you. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.